All right, hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another FNAF Theory stream. And it's been a while since we've done one of these, but don't you worry, these will never go away. These will always be around. Unfortunately, I just been on my NBA 2K26 grind, and that has unfortunately taken a lot of my time away from the usual Friday upload streams of FNAF. But we are back, and we are back with vengeance because this theory should be very interesting because we're going to be talking about Sister Location today, which is a game that has been out for about a decade. It's a game that came out in 2016. So it's been about a decade since the game came out, as I just mentioned. So I thought that we've had everything solved in Sister Location. It's not a situation where, you had FNAF 4, the game that predated Sister Location, that we are still trying to come to terms in what that game is all about. I feel like Sister Location is a game where we're pretty concrete or pretty certain in what all happens in Sister Location. You play as Michael Afton. You go down to the bunker that is built underneath the FNAF 4 house to try to retrieve the Funtimatronics. The Funtimatronics were made by William Afton with the goal in luring and encapsulating kids to try to build up enough remnants so that can lead to William Afton's goal of immortality. And obviously, you get tricked by the conglomeration that is entered using the voice mimics and sound illusion discs that we see. Basically, going to the point of entered leading you into the scooping room, and for you, Michael Afton, to get scooped, and they use your body as a skin suit to appear as human and then go out into the real world. And obviously that doesn't really work because over time, Michael Afton's body starts to decay and starts to be a rotting corpse and start to become purple. And that's where we see in the cutscenes. And that's when eventually the jig is up and eventually becomes too obvious, too suspicious, because humans typically do not have, solid violet purple skin. So that's when we see Ennard yeet into the sewers because they saw that they can no longer use Michael Afton as a skin suit, a Trojan horse trying to pose as human. And that's where we get into FNAF 6, and that's where we get into the whole thing about Circus Baby versus Scrap Baby, Spring Trap, and Burn Trap, Scrap Trap, also in FNAF 6. So I feel like it's been very concrete in what Sister Location has been all about, but very something we missed, and I'm here for it. What's up, Dakota? First of all, way to pop into my stream and talk about something that's not FNAF related, so thank you very much. Also, fire. And if you're going to bring something up FNAF related, let's see. Funny enough, there is no Foxy the Pirate game, unfortunately. But I would imagine there will be some DLC or something at some point because we have gotten like DLC with like mini games that are Foxy specialized, and I feel like people know Foxy is a fan favorite of the cast and everything. So maybe one day, but then again, I'm not too sure. This is still a series where, Freddy may be the name of the brand, the name of the company and everything, but Freddy himself, the brown bear, is not that important when it comes to a series timeline lore perspective. He's not that important, which is very odd because the game series is literally named after him, and he's probably the least important person in the entire cast. Like, Chica is more important because they were the first. And from what we saw in Secret the Mimic, we know they are very important because they were made in Edwin's costume manner and possibly linked to the Mimic. We know Bonnie's important because at least the Springlock Golden Bonnie suit is what William Afton used to be Springtrap and lure the kids to the lure the 5 kids to the back room and kill them, and that's what caused the whole series to kick off and everything. And then you have Foxy, who, as I just mentioned, there are certain mini games that are Foxy themed that go away from the whole, Five Nights at Freddy's, Freddy Fazbear design and everything, and people believe he was his own attraction, his own establishment that was later bought out by William Afton and Henry, and that's when he joined the cast later on. And then Freddy's just there, just hanging out, the least important person in the cast. And if we include Golden Freddy in that cast as well, we obviously know he is way more important than good old Brown Fazbear. Anyway, let's get into a game where it does not deal with the 4 main cast, especially Chica.
It's always a good day when another theorist absolutely cooks, and takes a detail that a lot of us had forgotten about or taken aside, and completely breaks open a game with it. And today is that day. Fellow theorist T-Dread's schedule theory sounds incredibly boring, but might just crack Sister Location, and with it, a lot of the timeline wide open. And no, I don't have a cat tree set up yet, but the cats are here now. Say hi. So Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. So what is schedule theory? Well, I'm not going to go over in its entirety here because we are not view stealing, boys. Y'all better go, no, not y'all better, y'all will go click the link and watch T-Dreads' full video on what schedule theory is and what it means. It's a really interesting theory, and I will not be touching on the majority of the details of it in this video. Because like I usually do when I cover somebody's theory, I'm not here to prove or disprove the theory. I'm going to assume the theory is true because it's interesting, I think anyway, to see what the implications of the theory might be if we assume it's right going forward. But just for the purposes of today's video, I will give you a very brief summary of the main points so you're not too lost. In the lead up to the release of Sister Location, Scott Cawthon hid a teaser for the game in the source code of his website. It was a schedule for the animatronics that were going to be featured in the upcoming game. Back then, someone made a spreadsheet to visualize it, and it's right here. At the
Whoa, man, that feels so ancient. Back then, when Scott was the one man in charge, he was the one solo man making Freddy Fazbear games. God, what a time to be alive. Once again, this is a time when we were getting a game every month or something like that. Man, what a time to be alive. And yeah, one of the ways you found out clues and Easter eggs was diving into the source code of the game itself or teaser images trying to find lore. Like for instance, leading up to FNAF 4, there was a lot of, was it me, linked to the 1987 Bite of 87 imagery. And you once again wonder why, when we saw the infamous bite at Night 5 in FNAF 4, knowing all that teaser images of was it me, linked to 1987, you wonder why when FNAF 4 came out, there was a lot of confusion of, wait, this was not the Bite of 87? Man.
Time, a lot of us just saw that and went, oh, we get some teasers for the names of the animatronics and left it at that. But T-Dreads and Cryonide found out that this isn't just some random one-off teaser, but you can one-for-one line up the latter half of this schedule with the full week that we play throughout the course of Sister Location.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. I'm already curious about this because, as bizarre as it sounds, the first time in the series where the days of the week, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the actual days itself are mentioned is FNAF 6. Because the whole point of FNAF 6 is, you play through the 5 nights and your whole point is, scrapping, salvaging all the animatronics and lure them all into the pizzeria to burn them all down. It's like, don't forget Saturday, don't forget Saturday, don't forget Saturday, don't forget Saturday. You need them all in one place to eventually burn it all down and end the story. At least that's what we all thought at the time. But as the catchphrase always goes, William Afton will always come back because the series will never die, which is good and for worse. But that was the first time, at least to my memory, days were actually part of the story. Other than that, it was, for instance, we assumed like FNAF 1, FNAF 2, like we get the paycheck of us working 5 nights, and we assume it to be, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because it's days of the week, like a work week. We assume that, but it's never been out there explicitly said until, once again, FNAF 6 with Don't Forget Saturday.
From available to booked to private party to maintenance. Using that, some of the other source code from the site, some theory crafting and brainstorming, some very well done logic, and making a hypothesis around this sound that plays when Circus Baby opens her keypad. They seemingly prove
Nice ASMR. Blah. Nice ASMR sound, Scott.
That Sister Location's animatronics were actively kidnapping children at the private parties they were rented out to. The shocks during the day were done so to make the animatronics more docile and reset them in a way. Otherwise, the sheer amount of remnant inside of them would make them lash out at other people. The final conclusion to all of this was that Sister Location as a whole was a project to put Elizabeth Afton back together, using as much remnant as William Afton could get his hands on. Now, the theory that the Sister Location animatronics were kidnapping children is not new.
Which is what we said in the introduction. Like, they are, in the blueprints, they're like 7, 8, I want to say babies like 9 feet, hulking mechanisms. And you also see in the blueprints, they have like sound illusion discs, voice mimics, audio lures, like all this like crazy stuff. And you see in this image, like there's a head, the 2 stubby arms, the stomach. Right, this is a child body inside of them. And it also is mentioned in one of the Fazbear Frights books. I want to say it's the first book of the Fazbear Frights series, but it's quite literally Funtime Freddy is in the book by name. And he goes with a child and he basically tells the child, hey, what is the most brutal way or what is the way you want to die? And Funtime Freddy does it. Just outright explicitly. And we obviously know also in Sister Location, the infamous scene in the cupcake minigame with Circus Baby is Elizabeth Afton gets too close to Baby. And that's when the stomach claw grip of Baby opens out, grabs Elizabeth Afton and scoops her.
This is a theory that's been out as long as the games have been, but up until this point, the only evidence we had to suggest this was vibes-based. Like, yeah, the animatronics were built to kidnap children, so they probably did so. There was no good evidence to back this up. And because of that and how much of a mess it makes the timeline, a lot of people assumed that to not be true for that reason. We just didn't have any good evidence. But thanks to that fucking candle, now we do. Again, there is a lot more evidence and theory crafting in that main video, so you really do need to go watch it. But I really wanted to take that theory and see what it would mean about the rest of the timeline if it's assumed to be true. And frankly, I kind of do assume that it's true because it's so well evidenced. Even T-Dreads mentions some of those implications. The fact that if in Sister Location, a bunch of kids were killed but never really mentioned again, that means one of the main counter-arguments for the DCI, the fact that the victims never appear again, is shot dead in the water. But I specifically want to talk about how this many more victims might affect the timeline after Sister Location. Because if Ennard isn't just the missing child incident victims and Elizabeth, but instead the missing child incident victims, Elizabeth, and like a bunch of other kids, I think this finally gives me a good explanation for one of my theories I've been trying to prove for some time now. So let's do one more look at the creation of the Tangle.
Which, if that's not already insanely complicated, instead of Ennard having like 6 dead souls with him, obviously Elizabeth Afton with Baby was connected to Ennard at some point, but in between Sister Location and FNAF 6 Pizzeria Simulator is when Baby, Elizabeth Afton was yeeted away from Ennard and became their own entity. And that's how we go from Baby to Scrap Baby in FNAF 6. But having going from 5 souls of the missing children's incident for Ennard, who we know becomes Molten Freddy in FNAF 6, and that's why it's so important for him to be one of the animatronics you salvage and bring into the pizzeria to burn down, to like 20 dead kid souls. Yeah, that doesn't make it already more complicated than it already is.
We should do a quick refresher very quickly. I know a lot of people are miffed about the current direction of Five Nights at Freddy's, how it's very science fiction forward and not really supernatural, so I figured it's high time to go back and refresh ourselves on some of the earlier parts of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise.
This location is what started the whole sci-fi angle. Because before FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 4, the whole themes were, kids lured to a back room, killed, and now the animatronics are ghostly, haunted, possessed, and you're at a haunted pizzeria working 5 nights at a rundown pizzeria. That was the story, that was the theme. Then this location comes out, and you bring in remnants and scoopers and funtime animatronics and sound illusion discs. Way more sci-fi.
The parts that were more supernatural and barely science fiction at all that were made by Scott Cawthon, like Sister Location, this game. Get wrecked, FNAF has always been sci-fi. But self-righteous snark aside, the animatronics of Sister Location carry throughout multiple FNAF games, and it can be a little confusing to follow that line, especially if you're not up to date with all of the evidence and arguing based around those animatronics. In Sister Location, the animatronics are very unstable, and by the end of the game, they have all shed their exoskeletons and form into one mass conglomerate, Ennard. This thing is made up of all of the endoskeletons of every other Funtime animatronic. Circus Baby, Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy. Once they form...
I'll say one question is... Yes, Ennard is like the person, the animatronic you see in the final night. Yes, that's true. I would say this sounds like a huge nitpick, and probably is. But this is something I've always thought about ever since playing through this location. Is instead of Ennard being just the person you see in the final night, and that's when his appearance comes to full form, that's the first time he comes in a full form and appears. What if instead Ennard has been around since the very beginning of this location? He is around in all 5 nights. You just don't see him until the final night. The reason why I say that is you never see Baby appear throughout the entire game of this location. You never see them talk, interact, nothing. The one and only time you see Baby's suit is them being slunched over, clearly being scooped out. There is no life form inside of them, and that's on the final night when Ennard appears. But we know Baby talks to you ever since night 1. So was that Ennard the entire time?
Into this creature, they trick Michael into the scooping room, scoop out his inside so they can wear him like a reverse Springlock suit, and exit the building, finally being able to escape the bunker because they look human. And this plan works, and they keep living in Michael for some amount of time until Michael Afton's body starts to rot, and they need to make a break for the sewers and escape. Now, Michael Afton should be dead here, but for whatever reason, like every other human in this franchise...
And you're supposed to be dead.
I got better?
He just kind of dusts himself off. Now, that's pretty straightforward. As weird as that is just the plot of Sister Location. There's very little theory crafting going on yet. The big question is...
How does this
I'll make a cup of coffee.
turn into this?
Cut my life into pieces!
We get the answer to this once again in the source code to a Scott website. Actually, 2 websites. In the lead up to FNAF 6, we got a conversation between the source codes of scottgames.com and fnafworld.com. The conversation reads as follows.
You are crowding us.
Be quiet.
You can't tell us what to do anymore.
Yes, I can. You will do everything that I tell you to do.
We outnumber you.
That doesn't matter, dummy.
We found a way to eject you.
You would be lost without me.
Ha! Say goodbye to our friend.
So this leads most people, and myself included, to assume that at some point, Elizabeth Afton, or Circus Baby, was kicked out of the rest of Ennard due to either her loyalty to Afton or just generally being insufferable. So when Circus Baby is ejected,
I think it's the loyalty to Afton, personally. Because that's the whole point in Elizabeth Afton's character, is I'll make you proud, William Afton, William Afton, William Afton.
she forms into Scrap Baby, and the remainder of Ennard forms into Molten Freddy. We then see both of them in FNAF 6, and they're both burned away for good forever, right?
Now I have a choice.
Okay, but that's the physical timeline of these robots, something that's fairly self-explanatory and doesn't require that much speculation. The huge question comes into the spiritual timeline of these robots. Well, for the longest time, and to an extent still, I believe in Molten MCI, the idea that this creature is made up of the souls of the Missing Child Incident victims, or at least their remnant. But how would that work? Well, it's a theory that most people work backwards from, as most of the evidence for it comes at the end of its timeline. In FNAF 6, we get this image for completing the Lorekeeper ending, which shows 4 named tombstones.
Okay, I'm gonna pause here because I don't know how specific we're gonna get on this, but how I've always interpreted, I don't know if this is gonna get brought up, but how I've always interpreted why Ennard, then later Molten Freddy, being linked to the missing children incident from way back in FNAF 1 is because just based on, basic context clues. And it's Occam's razor's simplest answer is the right answer, right? You bring in William Afton as Burntrap, so he's obviously important. You have Elizabeth Afton, who is Scrap Baby, very important. We assume we play as Michael Afton in all the FNAF games, so he stays in the fire as well. And then you have Lefty, who we know has Charlie Charlotte, Henry's daughter, the puppet inside. So, for lack of a better term, all these characters you're bringing into one room, and that's the goal, that's the point. All these characters you're bringing into one room are arguably the most important characters in the entire series. And then you have Molten Freddy, someone who it's like, well, what are they doing here? You have all these important characters, and you just have Molten Freddy here. It's like, why are you important? Why are you part of the game? Why do we have to salvage you? What makes you important? Oh, they're connected to Ennard. Oh, we are burning away the original kid souls that started this whole series. Oh, that makes sense.
And 2 hidden ones. The hidden ones are very hotly debated. Is it Charlie, the Crying Child, Elizabeth, Cassidy, the Vengeful Spirit, Andrew? Who knows? I have my own thoughts, particularly Charlie and Cassidy, but that's saved for another day. That's not really important for this theory. Right now, I want to focus on these tombstones, the named ones. These are, at this point, relatively confirmed to be the Missing Child Incident victims' names. Not only do the tombstones line up nearly perfectly with the animatronic masks at the end of FNAF 3, the fact that it's 4 random names, and the context of the game, but since FNAF 6, we've gotten confirmations of these names being the Missing Child Incident names over and over again. In the week before, Ralph sings Happy Birthday to Chica, and when he gets to the name, he feels compelled to say Susie. When he does, Chica goes on a rampage. Also in the week before, Brown and Light tells Raph, and this is a direct quote from the books, Jeremy got me. I mean, Bonnie. Sorry about that mess. Which is possibly as direct as we've ever gotten, and that Jeremy line is backed up in the games themselves. In Help Wanted 2, when you collect the Bonnie memory poppet, you get the achievement, Remember Jeremy. And most recently, in Dead by Daylight of all places, we got confirmation of the name Gabriel. Springtrap is a killer in that game, and in that game you can have add-ons to affect your main ability. One of Springtrap's add-ons is Freddy's Hat, which has the flavor text, Gabriel trusted the wrong grown-up. Now he is the star of the show. Which is crazy that this direct of a lore drop isn't Dead by Daylight. Regardless, 3 of these names are basically confirmed, which means that the 4th one, Fritz, is almost guaranteed to be Foxy. So I think it's safe to assume that's so, but who knows, maybe we'll get direct information soon. There's a rumor that Foxy is going to be a skin for the animatronic in Dead by Daylight, and if they give him a custom bio, there's a non-zero chance that Dead by Daylight is going to confirm Gabriel is Freddy and Fritz is Foxy before any official FNAF media does, which again is crazy.
There's also another point about Susie being linked to Chica is in one of the FNAF books. Apologies because there's like 60 million of them. But in one of the FNAF books, there is a girl with blue eyes and blonde pigtails, and their whole story is, oh, this man said, my dog died, but he wasn't really dead, and he led me to like this back area, this back room, saying, oh, he's not really dead, and like someone asked her, oh, then what happened? Oh, I don't remember. But then she says, oh, my name is Susie. We obviously see in FNAF 6 and the Fruity Maze minigame, we see a girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. And at the end of the game, the Springtrap William Afton is standing behind her saying, oh, your dog's not really dead. Come follow me. And the game just fades to black. That's it. When that's when we interpret, he led her somewhere to a back room and killed her.
So we know that completing FNAF 6 allows the missing child incident victims to find peace and rest, which implies they were in the fire. So if they were present at FNAF 6, well, who were they? Obviously they're not Cassette Man or the player, and of the 4 main antagonist animatronics, 3 of them have quite obvious identities. Scraptrap is a fan name. This animatronic is characterized and credited as William Afton. Lefty, although immediately a little more obscure, thanks to its blueprints and this rare screen you can get, we fairly clearly know this thing was created to capture the marionette and currently has it inside of it. So that's Charlie. Scrap Baby is just broken up Circus Baby, so likely it's Elizabeth Afton, especially since we got that conversation between Circus Baby and someone else, where Circus Baby was kicked out of Ennard. Meanwhile, the only animatronic left, Molten Freddy, is an amalgamation that speaks in multiple voices. This isn't rocket science. If we have a group of souls left over, they're in Molten Freddy. But like I said when I started this tirade, the evidence that the missing child incident victims are in Molten Freddy is strongest at the end of the timeline. It gets funky the further back up you go. Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby likely formed out of Ennard based off that conversation, which means that the MCI victim remnant must have been within Ennard to split off into Molten Freddy, which means that at some point the missing child incident victims remnant must have been injected into the Fun Times as they make up the components of Ennard. That's all fairly self-explanatory, but it becomes a hot button debate when deciding when and how the missing child incident victims remnant ends up inside the Funtime animatronics. Now again, I have my own thoughts on that, but it doesn't really matter for today's theory. The evidence we have suggests that the MCI victims remnant is inside of the Fun Times to go into Ennard, to go into Molten Freddy.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure a book outright states that I think it was Dr. Felix Fletcher, something like that. When it's the first book that actually states what Remnant is and talks about the power of agony. I'm pretty sure in that book it outright states that Remnant is derived and comes from the missing children's incident souls. I think it outright states it. I could be wrong though. But I think I heard about that. So just put a pin in that.
That's all fairly self-explanatory, but there's always one part of this equation that confused me. If the whole point of FNAF 6 is burning down these animatronics so the souls inside of them can find rest, and Molten Freddy, something that is likely made up of the missing child incident victims, also finds rest because of these tombstones, why is it that some 30 years later, there's still a massive amalgamation of wires with a Freddy mask roaming around that same building. It's like it wasn't melted down at all and it never found rest, but according to these tombstones, it should have, right? That's where I think schedule theory can come in. Schedule theory is positing that an unknown number of victims also had their remnant added to the fun times. These children were kidnapped, killed, and their remnant was harvested by William Afton. Oh, all done? I know you're a big baby. Oh, you want me to hold you different? Is this better? Oh, that's better. But now that people can't see your cute face. That's okay. In fact, the fun times had so much remnant inside them that they had to be routinely electrocuted to stay docile. If all of that remnant ended up in Molten Freddy, FNAF 6 actually backs this up. There's a bit of removed blueprints from the game. Now, using cut content is always tricky business, but I think this content was removed from the game because it frankly almost gives too much away. And those are the blueprints for Molten Freddy, or at least notes taken by likely Henry about Molten Freddy. It reads as follows. Facial recognition file 0072. Security tags active 001. Funtime.
Facial recognition file 0072. Security tags active. Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora. aka again the point of Molten Freddy being connected to all the Funtime animatronics, excluding Baby from Ennard, which once again we already talked about. Priority 1. With the most amount of remnant collectively in its structure, this amalgamation of Afton's constructs is a necessary element of paragraph 4. And obviously we know the whole thing in paragraph 4 is your contract with Fazbear to bring in all the animatronics from the alleyway at the end of your shift every night and salvage them. Which is what, because if you don't salvage the animatronics, you just play through the game normally and you ignore salvaging, you get fired, and the tape outright states, oh, you neglected to do the thing in your paragraph 4 employee contract, and that's why you're fired.
Freddy 002, Funtime Foxy 003, Ballora. Priority 1. With the most amount of remnant collectively in its structure, this amalgamation of Afton's constructs is a necessary element of paragraph 4. Now, if you're working off of just the framework of Molten MCI, this paragraph still makes sense. If there are 4 different spirits inside this Molten Freddy amalgamation, it would have the most remnant. But with schedule theory, this paragraph becomes a lot more severe. This thing is chock full of remnant, so much it can barely contain itself as one thing. It's falling apart at the seams, it has so much remnant and so many souls.
Also, do not take a drink every single time you hear the word remnant. Just warning.
Side of it. But again, why does that matter? If the FNAF 6 fire burned away everything and let all these people find peace, shouldn't the remnant of Molten Freddy be the same? Well,
no, because fire means absolutely nothing.
let's look again at why we think that. The same game gives us these blueprints of the Scooper, which have the line, there is a possibility that overheating might neutralize the effects permanently. The effects of Remnant. But note the phrasing here, might neutralize. Afton is not an expert and is still learning the science of Remnant. This is a hypothesis he has. But again, I'm not trying to say that the fire didn't work at all. We know where every character in FNAF 6 ends up after it. Several of the named characters are tombstones after FNAF 6. We have Ultimate Custom Night showing us where Afton ends up. We have FNAF World showing us that the crying child was collected and put back together. We know where every...
The problem is, well, first of all, we know Afton does not end up in Ultimate Custom Night because then what is Burn Trap in Security Breach? But the problem is fire does not work in this series. FNAF 3, Sister Location, FNAF 6, you have Security Breach, you have Seek of the Mimic. All these games, there is an ending where you burn it all down, and it leads to nothing. The characters are still able to walk away just fine. Fire means absolutely nothing.
Named victim ends up after FNAF 6. Every named victim. Heat may assist in neutralizing Remnant, but it's not a cure-all, and this is where Alone Together once again proves to be one of the most instructional books we've ever gotten in Five Nights at Freddy's. Alone Together follows the story of a young boy who doesn't know he's a spirit until he finds his own body. But his grandmother, also a ghost, informs him of how ghosts seem to work in this world. That they're unable to move on because they don't have their memories unless their body is found, either by somebody else or by themselves. If their body goes undiscovered, they might not even know they're dead. Now, every other spirit in FNAF 6 knows where its body is. Elizabeth's was put inside of Circus Baby. William Afton is his own corpse. Charlie's body was never missing. It was left in the street. And the missing child incident victims, I believe, were shown their bodies by Charlotte, so they know theirs as well. But the sister location victims, these children that were kidnapped at private parties, they're never offered such grace. We never hear about them. We never learn their names, never see what happened to them. We never even hear from the families looking for them. As far as they matter, they existed, they lived, and according to everyone who knew them, one day they disappeared. Heat can't fix that atrocity. Heat can't give them their memories back. And as is well established in Five Nights at Freddy's, if you don't have your memories as a spirit, you can't move on. You're stuck in this plane. So after FNAF 6 burns, and the humans and animatronics inside die and are laid to rest and can finally find peace, they are the only ones who can. Ones that either Henry didn't know about or assumed would also be laid to rest are left behind. Their bodies are long gone. The only one who ever saw them die was William Afton, likely the one overseeing their extermination. Those countless souls are still trapped down there, haunting the building itself, trying to find a way out so they can go back to the places they were when they were alive, coalescing, forming together, using any scrap of material left behind, forming a larger and larger mass of wires and endoskeletons into one central being, the Tangle. And one day, when their prison is shattering around them and they might finally escape, they run into something that looks familiar. A rabbit, a yellow rabbit, one that has the spirit or energy or maybe just likeness of the man who killed them. They grab him and escape, and the Tangle is a loose end that maybe in an upcoming game we'll have to deal with, and hopefully help find peace. How? I don't know. My best guess is in some way affecting their memories so they can find peace. Maybe that comes down to going into them ourselves. Maybe that comes to going to the old sister location bunker and finding their remains.
I will say, my question though is, knowing what we know about the amalgamation, the blob, here's the problem with it though. You're talking about, Ennard, the Molten MCI, the Missing Children Incident, Molten Freddy, being linked to the original Core 4 and the Missing Children Incident that led to them having the souls in the FNAF 1 animatronics. But Funtime Freddy is not the only animatronic in the blob. There's also FNAF 1, Chica, and Bonnie also in the blob. So how do you explain that then? How do you explain, characters from the Molten MCI in the blob, but also the FNAF 1, Bonnie and Chica also in the blob as well? Which one has the soul of those characters? Right? There's also FNAF 2 Mangle as well. There's also a Endo 01B, I want to say, also in the blob. So that's my question. If the FNAF 1 animatronics were not explicitly shown in the blob, I am more inclined to believe this theory, but that's my issue though, because you can't have the same character repeat multiple times. I know one way people get around that is, the reason why there is repeats or clones of these characters is going back to the FNAF AR game special delivery, and they are clones, amalgamations of the original animatronics that we know from the previous games, but they are now like digital recreations of that, and the whole goal is for them to be, shipped to your house for like private parties, which to me that just makes it overly complicated. It's like, well, then every single animatronic we see from this point on is either the real actual animatronic or just a clone mock-up to that was made in its likeness. So that just makes it even more confusing.
Whatever the answer is, something needs to be done about it. So yes, the Tangle might not be the missing child incident victims, but I think it might be comprised of all of the victims of Circus Baby's entertainment and rental. Every other unnamed victim in this franchise. The forgotten ones, the ones that were denied existing at all by much of this fanbase, including myself up until this most recent theory. So from now on, I think I might call this thing the Forgotten Tangle, for Aura alone. And again, go and watch T-Dreads' schedule theory. It's a good video. And if you have watched it and you're looking for something else to watch, if I did my job correctly, right here should be my playthrough of Secret of the Mimic at 0% brightness.
Nice. But that is my reaction theory. That is my thoughts on it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys enjoyed us being back to the FNAF theory videos, because I will always enjoy talking about FNAF, watching FNAF, interacting with FNAF. At this point, I feel like I'll get a tattoo of something FNAF related at some point, just because of how much I am invested and consumed by this franchise, and I don't think it will ever come to an end. But those are my thoughts on the theory. But disclaimers, as always, those are my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts on it, whether you agree with the theory, disagree with the theory, agree with my thoughts, disagree with my thoughts. Let me know, because as always, they're all theories at the end of the day, so let me know.